launching the product is a milestone. It's not the goal. The goal ultimately is to do things like increase revenue, gain more market share, increase margins, whatever it might be. A critical milestone on that path is to launch a new functionality, new capability set. To have a successful post-launch experience, it's all about the preparation or work that you put into it.
You are listening to This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, the product marketing community that gives back. In this episode, Axel Kirstetter, Vice President of Product Marketing and Sales Enablement at EIS, shares his thoughts on post-product launch. Let's dive into it right now. Hi, Axel. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Louise. It's so good to be here with you again. We appreciate the invite, and I think you've picked a super exciting and modern topic because there's a lot of interest in this subject.
Indeed. So today we're talking about post-product launch. To give our listener a little bit context here, what I mean by post-product launch is the phase immediately after the product launch and before the next release of the product. From your personal experience, can you share what usually happens after a successful product launch?
Yeah, I think the first thing is people have a different ways of defining what a product launch is. Even you in your question, you even said, product release, product launch. Those two things are not the same. So probably just need to take a brief step back and establish a little bit what a product launch is and sort of what goes into it. So to me, the spirit of the question here is when you have a final usable product where you have done your packaging research, so the value, how to optimize the value, all that sort of stuff. You've done commercial discovery, so how would sales be pitching this? How does the client respond to it? Things like contracts, SOWs, these things do matter. People want to know, what they're signing up to. And then obviously also you've had a bit of commercial validation, meaning the product is out in market, you passed the testing, you've had your sort of initial, 6 to 10 early adopter clients, and you're ready to roll it out. That to me is really what I consider to be a product launch and launching a product. And then so the other element to that is really one of what success looks like, successful product launch, I think, which is sort of the core of your question. And ultimately, it needs to meet targets. Whatever those targets are can be debated upon. And it's actually a very useful exercise to be done before the product goes live in market. But I would always play with things like, okay, revenue objectives, units do you want to sell? So $1 million or units, you want to sell at least 10 units, or logos that you want to get. Quite often product launches is to get going in the new market segment. So you do need to get some interesting logos in those accounts. Another way to think about it also is straight up usage. So, you want to get at least 100 users onto the system. That will be then the success of, or the target of a product launch. In modern agile, always think about time box. So revenue units or targets, whatever, in a 3-year cycle is not as great as saying in 90 days, in 180 days, in 365 days, this is where we would like to be at. And I always, believe you sort of have 30 days, 90 days, and a full year type of objectives. 30 days is all about leading indicators, website visits, what can you do, fine tuning, does it work, does it not work, do you need to augment the noise, tone it down. 90 days is a quarter, heat is on, executives want to know what's happening in the quarter, is it working, is it not working, you got to report up to the board where things are at, and hopefully you have something to show for the first 90 days, and by the way, it is a quarter, so if you launch something in February and your quarter is from January through March, then you have those sort of 45 days, but make sure it goes on to the full quarter, so there's a genuine measurement that can be done over full 3 months. And then obviously, where is it at the end of the year? Annual measurement is quite important as well. And so in between that, you got to optimize the packaging according to prospect feedback. But that's really where sort of, how to think about a product launch, and especially the post-product launch activities. You want to get your logos, your wins, you want to get the sales teams excited. All of those things are important in the immediate aftermath of launch.
Great. As you know, product marketers are constantly struggling with prioritization. It is even more true, I think, for post-launch. So after successfully launching the product into the market, as a product marketer, what should be the almost immediate next focus or goal here?
Yeah, I always believe, and this might sound a bit contradictory, but launching the product is a milestone. It's not the goal. The goal ultimately is to do things like increase revenue, gain more market share, increase margins, whatever it might be. A critical milestone on that path is to launch a new functionality, new capability set. And I think here, my go-to method is, in this case, would be to follow the adoption curve. So when you launch something new, you're looking at early adopters, the initial people that will be trying something new, even though you might have a great brand, but it's still early adopters. It might work for their circumstances. And they have a different way to think about it. Either they have a huge pain point, which your functionality addresses, or a complete trust in the brand, and Apple aficionados, whatever Apple comes up with, they will buy it first clients out the gate. But so follow the adoption curve. As you then get to from early adopters to late adopters, you'll have to address different pain points and different ways to think about what the next set of clients will need to have. So do get your early wins, do get those customer references going, lighthouse account methodology, the sort of beachhead Jeffrey Moore likes to talk about. Get the PR engine going. Difficult to do PR without having a client talk about, or the from to methodologies, and that hopefully will get to more wins. And so I always believe, early on, upstream from a product launch, do your research, get your segmentation right, get your messaging and positioning in order. Once a product launch is there, it's all about enabling the sales team. And then as the sales team is competent and is functioning, they can talk the story. Your job as a product marketer is the evangelization. So, talk about it, evangelize it, present at conferences, go to podcasts, including the Product Marketing Hive podcast, which is always a good one. And try to get the noise out as much as possible. And then, once you've maximized that, you can go back and optimize, figure out where things are at. So it's really not about launching the product. That's not the goal, but you have to chase the business aspect of revenue, of whatever targets, you're trying to define.
Great. So there are more than one product cycle happening at the same time. Let's say in percentage, how much attention should product marketers pay to the existing product, and how much for the next release, the upcoming one, in your opinion?
Oh, Louise, that's a fantastic question. It's one that you spend hours and hours arguing, debating. I'll give you my perspective. There is always the tendency in marketing in general to focus on the new shining object. Unfortunately, the new shining object doesn't pay the bills. And so what does pay the bills is the existing functionality that works. So I prefer to put a little bit more of the emphasis on the stuff that works, have a little bit less investment in the new stuff, but within context. So existing stuff means you probably have a demand engine set up. You probably know the channels that work, how they perform. That experimentation needs to happen for new channels. But what I'm sort of not, as interested in doing is blowing up advertising budgets when you haven't done sufficient due diligence to know what works, what doesn't work. If you have time to do it before the launch, great. You can sort of get that research down. But otherwise, I'm a bit cautious of over-investing in the new because a lot of things can go wrong.
Great. Thank you for sharing. As you said, that the goal at the post-launch phase is revenue. So selling the product, so to speak. What are the external factors that could impact the successful sales of newly launched products?
I think the biggest thing that you cannot really control influence is, first of all, what is your competition doing? And if they are bigger than you are or have a better relationship with media analysts, a customer base, their noise is going to drown out your noise. Always a massive event, Dreamforce. And it used to be the case that people would, launching this, launching that. But if you are not the biggest player in town, and you just get drowned out by the noise that Salesforce itself is able to generate. So what is the point in launching something new? You could do it beforehand. So, 2-3 weeks, hey, come and see us because we have new, great magnets to attract people. You could do it after the event. Hey, we tested it and prospects gave us great feedback and it's ready to launch. The other aspect of noise is really just when there's bigger stories out in the market. Maybe not the best of examples, but I believe the first launch of Amazon.com was actually round about 9/11. And obviously the worst time that you can try to launch anything out in the market. When there's something really big happening, nothing to do with the industry, nothing you can control, it is really difficult to get your message across. But what you can do is you can adjust, you can adapt, maybe, pull the communication off the shelf. So if you got a bigger noise factor, then just tone it down, remove your microsite, or call back the press announcement or cancel the interviews, whatever you had going, and save the next wave of noise for 2-4 weeks after that initial date was scheduled for.
Great. So competition is one of the main external factors that could impact the sales of the product. So for product marketers, what are the main considerations here? Competitive intelligence speaking.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question. To me, there's really two things that come together, and I'm going to expand a little bit on your question. And it's really that combination between competitive intelligence and market intelligence. So what's interesting to monitor, to observe, is how will your competitors react to what you've just said? So, especially in sort of a more commoditized environment, will they react within, 3 to 6 months, bringing in their own product? And you also need to think about if you are reacting, so, you could be reacting to what they brought up 3-6 months ago. Do you pre-announce stuff 6 months in advance? Do you do it as it becomes available? And that sort of also very much depends on culture. But the sort of things that you do track is then, how do sales engineers perceive, or what do they hear from their prospect? How do they talk about it? Is there any chatter in whatever LinkedIn or some of the other rooms that exist? And then according to what you hear, it is definitely worth adjusting 2-4 weeks after launch, giving your channel organization an update, what has happened, what's going on. The other aspect, market intelligence, is really, and this depends a bit on your strategic intent. If you launch a new product into a new segment, say you open yourself up to new competitors, you also do want to track over a longer period of time the extent to which your functionality is penetrating that market. So, you have things like win-loss rates, average price points that you got to keep an eye on, but within the context of, is the market that you're going after growing or not? Because if your win-loss rate is steady in a declining market, well, that's not very helpful. But if your win-loss rate is steady and or increasing in a growing market, that's fantastic news, as long as you maintain obviously your price point. So those are things indeed that you can track. And we touched on it a little bit earlier, but my sort of belief is sort of keep an eye on 30 days, because a lot of things to clean up, 90 days, 3 months, and then 1 year as a helpful indication of where you need to put your markers in to see where you're at. 30 days especially is like, did we deliver all of the bills of material, all of the websites, the training, all that sort of stuff. 30 days, again, depending on what you do, fingers crossed, land a few good accounts, get that success engine going, and then 1 year track to check, hey, what are the operational metrics? revenue is sales, but it's also margins. How are we costing things? Can we optimize things? This is again where, that iterative cycle, you're back now talking to product management and the operational people to see how you can maximize what you do. And indeed, the sort of longer timeframes of 1 year, that's also where you need to keep an eye on market intelligence, whether you are growing your market share that you intend to.
Also, I think there are some other micro factors that should be taken into account. For example, the regulations, and that might be important for some industries, as well as the larger economic environment. These might change the buyer behavior in B2B context.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. Depending on which industry you're in, biotech, medical fields, regulated financial services, regulatory environment does impose a lot of adjustments and adaptation, which can also lead to innovation. Once the interest rates started going up, for example, once the crypto market started going down, a lot of companies were suddenly forced to have to change their products, right? And there's also a communication how you go about doing that. Staff being cut and so forth means you're going to have to pick and choose what your portfolio looks like. So for sure, product marketing responsibility here is also to keep an eye on major events, as they're coming up. End of year is always a tricky one. Usually you go from one fiscal environment to a new one. And if you have high volume and low margin business, it usually means your taxes might change how your profitability is like, not so much in the States, but in other parts of the world where there's VAT being applied. So you do have to worry about these things indeed.
So in your opinion, how much does post-launch success depend on pre-launch planning?
Yeah, so in talking this through with you earlier, I sort of said jokingly as the Pope Catholic, it's like, yes, you have a successful post-launch experience. It's all about the preparation or work that you put into it. So, things like lighthouse accounts or reference customers, that takes work. My belief has always been that you need to treat your early customers exactly the same way as you treat your full-scale customers, meaning you need to have a fully functioning statement of work for them. You need to have established your price list. You need to have developed your collateral. When they go to the website, what are they going to see? Obviously, you can work with microsites and so forth. But so you need to have a fully fledged experience for them prior to launch. That feedback, it is early on feedback. You can then incorporate, adapt, adjust. But what you do want to avoid is that suddenly you find yourself in front of sales and you haven't thought about, well, what does the contract look like? What do commissions look like? Sales wants to know, like the product, see what it does. Fantastic. Yes, my customers will love it. What's in it for me? If you haven't thought about from a sales perspective how they're going to get paid, don't expect you to hit your revenue targets. There's also sometimes supply chain issues. If you haven't fully thought through the stock keeping units that you need to maintain, that you need to manage, informing your suppliers, we need more of this, less of that. That all happens beforehand. So managing demand, especially in retail and consumer environments, critical things. You got to train your sales organization, whether it's direct, indirect, it doesn't matter, but they need to be enabled to know, hey, what's coming up? And you don't want to do that after the fact. I think good time from sort of 2 weeks prior to sort of the PR date. I also believe, in a coming soon type of messaging, get the excitement going, a week, 10 days, that's 2 weeks out. On, whatever, 1st of September, we're going to be launching this new functionality. Come visit the website, talk to your rep. And obviously at that point, the rep needs to know what the heck they're going to be talking about. Otherwise, bad purchasing experience.
As you just mentioned, gathering feedback, listening to customers and sales is one of the key activities. So maybe here, just to summarize, who are the most important counterparts that during this post-launch phase, and then what kind of feedback are you looking for from them respectively?
Yeah, I think as you shift from sort of a pre to a post-launch, your dialogue interfaces change from sort of engineering, product management, operation, to a bit more the customer-facing staff, customer success, sales, marketing. Hopefully in product marketing, you actually spend time with customers as well, because then you sort of go from researching, planning to executing and being in market. And you have to make yourself heavily available to, your sales counterparts, your sales engineers, and whoever else is touching on this sort of early indicators in terms of, is it working, is it not working? Again, ultimately, the launch is a milestone. What you're really trying to impact are the revenue numbers, the targets, the units, and that means you need to keep your ears to the ground. And the ground in this case, customers, and the interface is sales engineering, customer success, partners, if that's of relevance in that particular business. And I think that the type of activities that you do, the sort of things to look out for is, I think the messaging positioning is critical. So hopefully you would have fixed that prior to launch, but it's happened especially around sort of pricing, where people will tell you, oh, it's too expensive, too cheap. And is that now sales saying they can't sell it because of it? Is it customers saying actually they don't believe in the messaging behind it? Pricing is also a value perception, and so perception is communicated via messaging. So those are areas to look out for. Easy to adjust and adapt on the website. If you have your core messaging wrong, I think one of the things that's always interesting is you have sort of 3-4 key messages, but they might vary by region. And then especially if you do A/B testing, I'm a big believer in A/B testing and launches as well. If say you want to, unsure about your messaging, A/B test something, region A versus region B, and see what yields better results based on sort of similar environmental circumstances. So that's pretty exciting as well. And then overall, I always believe, are people excited? Product launches and really the adoption thereof, so that the post-launch is just a buzz. It's the excitement there. It's new. It should be, new logos, new markets, new segments. And if there's no excitement, why? Psychology of the feel-good factor of the new shining object yields also a lot of benefits for existing stuff. And so that's something else I would like to make sure I align on, including with HR. I think it's also important internal comms to make sure that, hey, these are the new tools and capabilities that we have coming up, and can we get it into the employee newsletter? And it's just a buzz and excitement. So yeah.
So in your opinion, does the post-launch phase look different in companies with different go-to-market motions? Or does different go-to-market motions matter in post-launch phase?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic question, because it absolutely does. I think there's 6 go-to-market motions. So you have a product-led, which is obviously all the rage these days, sales-led, marketing-led, relationship-led, a couple of other ones as well, but let me just sort of stick to those ones for a moment. Most of what I went through is sort of the sales-led approach, of basically working with your customer success teams, your sales teams, informing them, enabling them, etc. Marketing-led is a bit more that inbound engine. So launching new product, and you got to write your blogs, you got to get your SEO organized, and ideally, you actually do that before the stuff is available. Consumer trends, it's quite common. You'll announce something will be happening and do your campaign, knowing full well it's going to take 3-4 months before something arrives. I bought a new pair of shoes not a couple months ago, and I'm still waiting for them to arrive. But I knew that was the deal. It was sort of a new launch, coming soon, and I was okay with that. So that's kind of on the marketing side. And then with regards to product-led growth, so PLG, you have the option of doing the fine-tuning in a more immediate manner. The problem here is there are steps involved: attract people to the website, convert them on the website, then they get to experience the product, then they get to grow with the product. It's also an inbound motion initially, which you need to obviously nourish through that organic and paid for stuff. So that's kind of, as you get launching. And then if you realize that the conversion, there's stats out there what the conversion should be like, both websites to trial as well as trial to paid, as well as paid to upgrade. And if you realize those metrics don't quite work out, well, you can use your telemetry to optimize the various factors that you have available, the various levers that you can pull. And again, the way you sort of think about that is quite differently. And this is, by the way, also assuming that the PLG notion here is one that's purely online. You can also have a sales team that leads, and then the product sort of converts. But yeah, those very much exist as well. Key areas I'm looking for: does the message resonate? Does it work in terms of the pricing? Because you can track on what people are looking at. Do they hover on the page too long? Where do they hover? You can sort of adjust your approach accordingly.
This is great. We're getting to the end of our time here. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I mean, the one, I think it's a really interesting topic, just because there's been so much work being done over the last couple of weeks and months on this topic. I've been contacted multiple times. Ebook, I know Gartner just came out with some stuff as well. I hope the community here will be able to add a little bit of information in terms of what has worked for them. I know that after this, we're going to do a little bit of a follow-up. Thank you, allowing me to share my thoughts on it. And it's really a journey from product launch, which is product marketing activity, to then the customer success and everything that goes on between those stages. Is just a fascinating area to follow and to pursue.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Louise.
Thank you for tuning into This is Product Marketing, brought to you by Product Marketing Hive, a product marketing community that gives back. Check out our website, productmarketinghive.com, to join our community, meet fellow product marketers, and access free resources, including training, playbooks, templates, and events. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe and give a 5-star rating on the platform of your choice. See you next time.